Welcome to this edition of the Million Dollar Mastermind podcast. This is where we pick the brains of high achievers from all walks of life and get their hard-earned, real-world insights on winning. I'm your host, Larry Weidel. That's kind of an extension of the principle that you and I learned early in our sales career about the good is the enemy of the best. And so, you want the best possible person you can get in there. Would you, that rings a bell?
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, it's, you know how it is. And then, again, that's where the always growing comes in. It's like, oh yeah, but they could do this. That's probably one of the biggest mistakes. I'll tell you where people have grown to maybe not like me over the years is I overpromote people. And it's not good for them either. It's not good to give people, they call it the Peter principle, right? You rise to your highest level of incompetence. Right. And that's not good. I don't do that anymore, right? I have fixed that problem. I have no problem being like, look, here's where you're at. This is where I think you're fantastic. We call them PDPs. Every person has, here's your role today. Here are the skill sets of what your next role would look like and the skill sets of what your next role would look like. And you either have those skill sets in the role now for the next role or you don't get promoted. And it's just a kind of a good learning opportunity for anybody listening too, is like, you're never going to get promoted or, it's not going to work out so well if you get promoted and you haven't already learned the skills versus thinking you're going to learn on the job. It's another thing that I think a lot of people don't realize early in their career either.
What size company would bring you in? What would the company look like that would bring you in to scale their the one thing I wonder about scaling the sales is the turnover and dealing with turnover. And, there's a lot of issues related to the sales force. And so if you're talking about scale, I guess that's part of what you're scaling up, the ability to replace people and all that. Like one time I was on the ski lift with this guy, and what he and his team did, they would buy like 100 Burger Kings and they'd have a swap it for, they had 100 of everything, all these different Popeyes chicken and 7-Elevens. We just bought 150 7-Elevens and swapped that up. And so I said, 7-Elevens, how about theft? Your manager's stealing from you. He goes, oh, we just factor that in,
Right. Like a loss.
They just build it in. But, this idea of turnover and replacement, is that just something you factor into your, what you're scaling up? And how, what kind of company do you work with? Where does that fit?
There's a couple of things in there that I'll try to answer. One, yes, it can be really difficult early on to know the right DNA for your sales org. When you haven't hired, after you hired 20 or 30 people, you should know. And so then therefore your model, if you're going to forecast 30% churn, maybe your model goes down to 15 or 20% or something like that. So don't beat yourself up. I'll tell you the best leading indicator for success is not the Rolodex. That's usually the worst. The companies that we see that have high attrition early when they're trying to grow is they try to cheat to get ahead. What they do is they say, oh, Johnny's been in the industry for 10 years. We'll hire him. He's got all these relationships. And then Johnny has one. And 6 months in, you're like, Johnny, what's going on, man? You hire people who have done a similar sales motion, a similar deal size, a similar length of sale, a similar level of sophistication. If they have a Rolodex, great. But I'm telling you, way more often than not, I'm going to go 75-25 or 80-20. The companies fail when their first go-to-market strategy is to hire people from the industry because everybody overinflates their contacts. And there's, again, those 20%, 25, maybe you'll hit a few home runs. But if you focus your hiring profile on, okay, did they sell to a similar level of person? Did they do this? Did they do this? I can teach someone an industry much easier than I can to have a repeatable process of they know what this looks like. They know what this deal size looks like. So that's just anybody who's scaling their sales organization. That's just something to think about. And then over time, again, you kind of look to refine that and replicate it. We're best with companies that have, call it the either initial or even later stage market traction, where maybe if you're a you're a private equity backed company. You could be doing 5 or, let's call it 10 to 20 million. And you're trying, you've got your 4-year hold period, and, operations start to become really important as you're trying to say, Jake, we need to drive 30% more revenue, but I can only add 10% more cost to my sales team. How do we do this? Or, Jake, I don't have visibility into my business. We're doing 50 million, 60 million a year, and I don't even know my forecast accuracy is still in Excel. And we've got to ask the sales reps. So it's, and we will work with earlier stage companies that are going from kind of step 1 to step 2, but it's those inflection points in a business. Okay, you go from 1 million, how do we get to 10? You try to go to 10, how do we get to 40? The classic saying, what got you there won't get you to where you want to go.
Right.
All kinds of things break down. Again, like you need to have a way to ramp salespeople. One of the biggest fallacies is that if salespeople know how to sell, they're going to come in and be successful. And the analogy I always use is software engineers. So if a software engineer is a really good coder at this other company, so you're just going to say, here's a computer, here's our code base. You've done, C++ before, just start coding.
Yeah.
What? You would never, but that's what we do with sales reps. We're like, there's no, this is how we document our code. This is how you do things. And so they wonder why salespeople aren't effective. You have to have a playbook for your sales team, even if it's a rudimentary one. These are our best practices that we know. This is the process. So usually a lot of the work that we're doing is these companies have grown. They're just right place, right time. Good little niche market, or niche of a niche, or they've just done a roll up, and now they got 4 companies acting like 4 companies, and they need to act like one. Or it's we're going that 10 to 20 to 30, and we don't even have a sales ops person. Our sales leader's
Right.
doing all this stuff. And it's like a revenue operations person, and I'll just kind of define this for people, is someone who's a strategic partner to sales, customer success, marketing, the CEO, who says, look, I'm going to look at our complete customer journey. How do people find us, touch points, all the different conversion points to when they leave. And I'm going to say, how do we increase the process to get more people through that? And then how do we use technology to augment our playbook or whatever it is? And so revenue operations is kind of a new category for people, to think about. So it's usually, things are going well, and now it's time to operationalize to increase that productivity. And, it's usually, again, sometimes we need to build a playbook because it's a process problem. And other times it's, well, we got to fix some data things so we can actually get the reports that we need to run the business. So.
Well, as you learn, as you develop, you become more focused in your knowledge, and the extraneous, the unimportant, kind of moves out. And what I've seen you narrow your focus in on where you wanted to change the way that consulting is defined, and with basically how you generate results today, on the strategic vision, tactical strategy. How did you come to that conclusion? And how do you, I'm sure that's part of what you present when you're talking to new clients.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say that. There's been, again, a lot of refining, right? It was like, well,
Right.
revenue operations, strategy, and enablement. We're doing these things. And again, it goes back to where do I think the market's headed? How we used to scale sales organizations, and I've built the forecast, is X number of salespeople have X number of quotas. We expect X amount of churn, and that's how we're going to hit 40 million this year, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever that looks like. Now is the time where more and more organizations are saying we've got to really figure out productivity. And I feel like this trend is going to continue. And so I think for us, we realize that, and our competition is, you've got people that like to build sales playbooks and charge you hundreds of thousands for a playbook. But then the issue actually is this other thing. It's just presenting later down. So you think you've got a playbook problem, then it's not. And then you've got these sales technology firms that want to come in and charge you hundreds of thousands of dollars to redo your sales force. And it's like, that's not the problem. The problem is like the sales team isn't documenting things correctly. And so
Right.
Our ability to bring to bear both technology and enablement, playbook, and solve those challenges is really what it came from. That I believe, hopefully right, that is what people will demand in the future. It's like, yeah, you guys can do a playbook, but can you guys make sure that this thing actually sticks? Or, yeah, you guys can build out my sales force, but can you actually help with the change management to make sure it sticks? That second layer versus people just throwing money, getting past the CFO for justification. I think we just really believe that if you can't do both and you don't have a strong point of view on that, you're going to struggle. So
We're up against your hard stop. I'm going to always give my guests a chance to offer a final word and a final, I always like to reward the people who have stuck around and listened all the way to the end.
I love it. I love it. Well, look, everyone, I'll tell you, I'll leave you again. I hinted at some of the generative AI piece. If you are a business owner right now, I had ChatGPT build me, I've got a 5 and a 9-year-old, right? And so there's conflict and all that. I had ChatGPT build us a family operating system, which is like, how do you define core values? How do you define respectful communication? That would have taken me 3 hours. Instead, I was able to use ChatGPT and my wife and I tweaked it. But the business applications of ChatGPT, I just really encourage all of you to start to play around with it. Whether it's in how you onboard people, get them up to speed on industries, any new project that you're thinking of, spend the time. I'm telling, again, a lot of the conversations I'm having remind me when the internet came out. And people are like, yeah, this internet thing, yeah, we know, but what about privacy and security? And I'm like, was it better to have the internet or not have the internet? And so ChatGPT, we are going this route. So you can either choose to put your head in the sand or you can embrace it, and it can really transform a lot of the things that you do. So I'll leave you with kind of that forward thinking nugget. And obviously, if you want to get in touch with us, you can find me on LinkedIn. I do a ton of content there. Just Jake Dunlap. You can also go YouTube. I put out a lot of sales videos there. But definitely, DM me, reach out.
We didn't get around to your podcast, but you do have a podcast, the Jake Dunlap Show.
That's right.
And maybe next time we'll get a chance to talk about that.
There we go. We can do that,
Thanks
man.
so much,
I like
Jacob.
to have conversations like you do. So definitely come check it out. And I really enjoyed the conversation.
This has been fast and this has been fun. Look forward to the next one.
Me too, my friend.
Thanks for listening to the Million Dollar Mastermind. If you felt there were any valuable takeaways from this episode, please take a minute and leave us a 5-star review. Your feedback is important and really helps us get the word out to a wider audience. Remember, we have a valuable webinar that is absolutely free. Register for it right now at weidelonwinning.com. Thanks for listening.